This is Perth's Elite Personal Trainers Podcast. Your host, Danny Marina, talks to some of Perth's best and most successful personal trainers in the city. Join Danny now as he talks with his guests that share some of their secrets of how they get clients in great shape and how they achieve success in the Perth fitness industry.
Welcome everybody to Perth's Elite Personal Training. I'm Danny Marin and my next guest is a physique coach, personal trainer, nutritionist, and someone I refer to as a go-to person in the fitness industry. She currently works out of Good Life in Mairie. Please welcome Alice Cousins. Hello, Alice.
Hi, Danny. Thanks for that introduction.
You're welcome, and it's all true. So,
Thank
if I can start, because I remember when I first came across you, it was a part of that workshop. There's a group of personal trainers that came down and you did sort of the workshop that I put on. It was more so like a sort of a death session.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was my first sort of the time I came across you, and it was a sort of like a follow-up session that we did, like a month later or so with some of the personal trainers, and this sort of a workshop. And then the only time I sort of saw or sort of heard of you was actually on Facebook.
Okay.
And it was like, if we're members of like a fitness group or sort of a fitness page on Facebook,
Yep.
all these sort of the comments that sort of people write on their particular page, they come up on your news feed.
Yeah.
And so I would see, like constantly come up on my news feed, people asking questions, like who do you recommend as a nutritionist, as a great nutritionist? Who do you recommend as a great prep coach? Who do you recommend as a great personal trainer? Who do you recommend as just a savior to all? Sort of like, that's what the sort of questions were like.
Yeah.
And your name was sort of like constantly coming up, like Alice Cousins this, Alice Cousins was coming in. And I was actually sort of losing my self-esteem because I think, hang on, who is she? So I delved into it a little bit deeper, and then I sort of went onto your page and saw all the sort of fantastic results that you were sort of achieving with your clients. In particular, sort of the sort of the clients that you sort of prepped for comps. Those sort of like made up the bulk of the pictures that I saw, and you're just having some fantastic results. So it was like, when I get the opportunity, I can't wait to sort of like have a sort of a conversation with you in regards to sort of what you do and how you get these people in shape. So the last and it's sort of like the last time I seen you was sort of like just a couple of weeks ago at my sort of my death session or my crash session. So what have you been up to for the sort of last 6 or 7 months?
The last 6 or 7 months, I've been basically focusing on my business a lot, actually. After competing myself a couple of years ago, I kind of made that into start me off in the industry, and then I did pretty well. So I think that's helped in getting a lot of clients myself, obviously with a nutrition background too. So since then, I've kind of put myself on the back seat and focused on my clients. So the last 6 or 7 months, I guess that would include season B comp preps for last year, and then also in 6 weeks there's a comp coming up, so I'm pretty busy with comp prep clients again at the moment. It's a bit seasonal for me, the comp prep side, and then obviously I have other clients as well who I find just as rewarding, actually, getting results for just everyday people wanting to lose a little bit of body fat and get their health back on track.
And in regards to, say, fat loss, would that sort of make up the majority of your sort of clientele, what their goal would be?
Yeah, definitely the majority, but I do work with very dynamic sort of groups, including I have actually a couple of clients who obviously a lot more males, but also a couple of females who the goal was to, put on lean muscle mass. I even work with an anorexic client, and we've got her slow but steady results. Obviously, that sort of clientele has a lot more psychological work to do, so you've got to take it really slow. But so yeah, very vast group of clients, but majority would be fat loss. Yeah.
Okay. So given that, and I know the topic of fat loss is sort of like, just a big sort of issue, a big topic that most people sort of come to. Well, they come to myself. I find that that's sort of like the main goals, and I know, for as long as I've been in the industry, that's usually the main sort of goal of a lot of people. And I know it's sort of like a lot of other sort of trainers sort of, this makes up the vast majority of their clients' goals are as well. So given that, what would be the general principles that people can sort of follow to lose some body fat?
General principles. All right. Well, to be honest, it really does depend on where the individual is starting out. So for the majority of the population, just simple things like making healthier food choices. For example, I guess decreasing a lot of the supermarket foods at the moment are pre-packaged and processed foods, and we're actually getting a lot of, I guess, non-nutritious but calorie-dense foods out there. So it's really about education for this lot. Trying to stick to more whole foods, which obviously, because they are more nutrient dense and lower in calories usually, it's a lot harder to overeat. So I find for many people, just cleaning up their diet, I guess, will help. Also engaging in a little bit of activity too, because I guess in the last century, we've been having a lot more reliance on technology, so our activity factor has decreased a lot. So we're actually finding that we're having to go out and purposefully engage in exercise, I guess. So for that sort of general population, just education, rethinking sort of values and priorities, I guess, and preparation is a big part of it as well. That will help them to lose a little bit of body fat. And that's the first step. You really don't want to play all your cards at once, I guess. So you want to make small changes at once. And when that sort of plateaus, then you look to maybe seeking help or the next step. So that's probably half, or that's the majority of the wider population. But to be honest, a lot of the clients I'm actually seeing, I'd say probably 80%, actually have the opposite problem. So most of them are eating either far too little or sort of overtraining, which can also really sabotage the fat loss results. I guess what I mean is when we overtrain and undereat for a long period of time, it will work initially, and then the body's really good at metabolic adaptation. So everything slows down the metabolic rate through a thing called NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That will slow right down, and so as a result, our resting metabolic rate slows. So people find that often they're having stubborn body fat that's really hard to shift, and the body, doesn't prioritize the fat loss in that case. So often I find with these clients, actually bumping up their calories in a controlled manner can actually kickstart their fat loss. So it really does depend on where the individual is starting. I guess my general principles to start someone off would be to start off small, clean up the diet, and make an effort to exercise maybe at least 3 times per week. As I say, you want to start off small so you've got cards up your sleeve to play with, so the body's not adapting. Once they plateau, I'd probably gradually increase exercise, maybe 4 to 5 times a week, possibly cut calories slightly or increase depending on where their level is. It's it's really dependent on the individual, to be honest.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's um, some real sort of knowledge sort of bombs in that sort of whole response that you gave, because it sort of confirms sort of everything that I sort of apply and do sort of my clients. And I love the part that you start off small.
Yeah,
You start off small,
absolutely.
because if you play all your cards at sort of at once, you sort of like if you in your plateau when you plateau early, you've got nothing else to really fall back on.
That's it. Yeah.
So and that's and the other sort of real pearl I took from that um, is there's this thing about beast mode, and as well as I do. I've brought that quite a few times.
Yep.
Beast mode is almost cliche. People just want to be seen as just getting shit done. Beast
Yep.
mode. I'm doing this, doing that. When sometimes doing less is better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing less is better because
But yeah, it
just
definitely can be.
yeah, it's like playing all your cards at once, and then just like with your nutrition, you pigeonhole yourself, and then when you reach that sort of like that ceiling, just like with your nutrition, you can't go any further. You can only go back.
That's it. So I actually find in that case, where someone's plateaued in that way and they've got nowhere really to go, I would use sort of controlled ongoing cyclical nutrition programs. So it's constantly calories are tapered up and down depending on where they're at. And I find that really helps to beat any plateaus that the client might have.
Awesome, awesome. It's
Yeah.
almost like counterintuitive, isn't it?
It
Increasing your
is.
calories, yeah, you get
Yeah.
more results, you lose more.
Oh, the surprise that I see on a lot of clients' faces when they come in for their follow-up measurements and they've dropped body fat from their calories increasing.
Yeah.
It's gold. I love it every time.
You'd almost be seen as like a sort of like someone of black magic.
Yeah, yeah,
Increasing
yeah.
calories,
That's it.
going against the grain, counterintuitive, and yet it actually has the opposite effect.
Yeah, yeah, it can. Really depending where the individual started from,
Yeah,
particularly someone who's had a history of chronic dieting as well.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alice, this will actually, that first question will tie into this one because you've probably already sort of alluded to it already with some of what you already said. Can you just give us a brief overview on how you prepare some of your clients? And it doesn't necessarily have to be, your competitive sort of clients, the clients that compete. It could be
Yeah.
just the everyday sort of clients that just train for their appearance or their health. But how do
Yeah.
you prepare them?
Okay. As I say, it does really depend a lot on the individual and where they currently are. So the first thing I'll do is find out everything about them. So in the initial consult, I'll ask them questions about, their past and present training history. Also, dieting history is a massive influence. I'll go through a bit of a 24-hour dietary recall, or I'm also asked what their typical diet consists of and make notes on that. That's a way to get an idea of current habits and how they tend and like to eat, because for me, a big thing about nutrition is obviously compliance. And so my nutrition programs will be completely individualized. So what I try to do is keep it as similar actually as possible to how the client likes to eat. Obviously, if their diet is completely, crap, for, no use of a better word, then I'll change it a lot. But if most of my clients I find are eating actually majority healthy, so all I do is put a bit of a plan to it. So I know macros where they don't. And I try to keep it as similar as possible. And I find that's really helpful because most of my clients will say, that they haven't felt like they've been on a diet at all. So that's what makes it more of a lifestyle. So I guess after that, I'll take the initial measures. So I'll take a skin fold assessment to try to get an idea of their lean body mass. And I actually use a computer software where I plug in that number and it automatically calculates their estimated resting metabolic rate. From that, I calculate, their activity factor, and how many calories they should potentially be on to maintain their current weight. That's where from here it sort of changes depending on the goal of the client. So if the client's goal is to put on lean muscle, I will start with maybe a 10% increase on their calories from what their current calories are. So if someone's come to me and their resting metabolic rate tells me one thing, what they should be on to maintain their muscle mass. Usually I find people are under eating, so they usually get about a 20% deficit anyway, under eating normally. So if that's the case, I'll bring them up to their baseline. I'll leave them there until they usually maintain their weight settles, skin folds don't change. And from there, depending on their goal, I'll do either a increase in calories or a deficit there. So I'll usually bring someone who's at maintenance down to about 80% of their estimated energy requirement until they plateau. So I'll keep them there until they plateau, and then I'll bring them back up to 100. That gives the hormones a chance to reset and rebuild, and prevents any adaptation. So that's the norm. What I do for sustainable fat loss. But as I say, it really does depend on the client. So some people work well off this and others need a little bit more drastic approach. But yeah, so depending on how they're currently eating, I'll either then clean up their diet tailored to their specific needs and keeping it as similar as possible. And in many cases, this is all the client will actually need to initiate the fat loss. So when these clients plateau, I'll make the necessary changes to keep them progressing. So that's the cyclical nutrition methods I was talking about. So periods of reduced calories and bringing them back up to baseline. In other cases, I guess, where the client is already under eating, I'll gradually increase their calories, so reverse diet them. Slowly, they're aiming to keep the body fat the same while their calories increase until the client is then near their 100% of their estimated energy requirements. So that's when it becomes high enough to actually induce a healthy drop in calories, and also it'll actually work for them, because if they're under eating, you can't just keep going down and it won't work anyway. In some of these instances, the clients actually, as I say, drop body fat while I'm increasing their calories, but the main goal is that it's staying the same while I'm doing that. So that's just a bonus in those clients. So to keep progressing with body fat loss, we'll have the follow-up assessments. So I'll remeasure them during this time. I'll reassess the program on what I want to do, and make any necessary changes to keep the client progressing, I guess. So yeah, like I say, the body's amazing at adaptation. So nutrition and fat loss, like exercise, is generally an ongoing process and not a once-off diet plan. Yeah.
Sure. And so with your clientele, so we know that nutrition is the primary driver behind fat loss.
Yep.
But given that, what other sort of training protocols do you put in place to sort of like, say, complement or, and even sort of accelerate the fat loss effect?
Yep. Actually, do you know what? I've recently changed my methods towards this. So I used to use things like a lot of volume, so giant sets, drop sets, just that real true feeling of fatigue and lactic acid. That's sort of how I used to train. I've recently changed, currently switched to more of a sort of strength focus for fat loss. And this is because of ongoing learning and education myself. So now I'm focusing on the big compound movements. So like your squat, deadlift, bench, military barbell press, pull-ups, dips, glute thrust for the females especially. As these are more bang for your buck exercises, I guess, because you're working more muscles, bigger surface area requiring more calories for fat loss, so requiring more energy. And also, if you're progressive overloading someone in these big movements each week, and this can either be done through like increasing the weight or actually increasing reps at a certain weight. That guarantees that you're increasing your lean body mass, so that the body responds, so that it's better prepared to handle the training load the next time. And by increasing your lean body mass, that increases your resting metabolic rate because your muscle tissue is very active. So it requires more energy to be maintained. So the higher the lean body mass, the higher the RMR, which is resting metabolic rate. And with a controlled diet, so if you keep your diet the same and your lean body mass is increasing, this actually can equal fat loss in itself. So with a controlled diet, strength training is very effective. Yeah, I do a bit of a combination. So it's always a strength focus, and then at the end I throw in some volume, which has always got to be at over 65% of their 1 rep max for hypertrophy. Yeah,
I love that because just sort of recently, just with my own sort of training approach, I'm a sort of very structured, sort of measured sort of trainer, and everything has to have a rhyme and a reason to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You can't sort of guarantee the cause and effect from sort of each given stimulus, but you can sort of predict what the sort of cause and effect will be. When you sort of like, when you read the sort of literature, when you do your sort of, your background checks on it, and sort of like just the time in the trenches that you've done, you just become more knowledgeable and experienced, so you can sort of work out roughly what the cause and effect will be. So, because of that, I've become a lot more measured. So,
yeah.
Given that, with nutrition being the big driver, the sort of the ace behind behind fat loss, 99% of the time, I'm just with my training, I'm just making sure that I'm trying to maintain their strength as much as I possibly can. Then I can guarantee that I can preserve their muscle tissue while still losing the body fat.
That's it. It's pretty simple, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's not rocket science.
No.
It's not rocket science, but so many sort of people go sort of wrong in that sort of area when it comes to sort of fat loss.
Well, there's a lot out there, I think, that's confusing, I mean, so many different gurus and things online that you can read. And I mean, it's all good. At the end of the day, any exercise is good exercise. But people get confused, so they overthink things. But yeah, as long as your strength is progressing and your diet's controlled, you should be able to lose body fat, absolutely.
Yeah, hey, we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
I must be doing something right.
Yeah. Hope that's giving you a bit more self-confidence.
My confidence is coming back by the second.
Good.
I should have a notepad here just ticking boxes. Alice agrees with that. I'm doing that. Yeah. Okay, so that all checks out. So moving on to the, you can have the nutrition in place, and you can have the training. You can have the best training, best nutritional sort of plans in place.
Yep.
But unless someone's following it, I mean, it's pretty much just a waste of time. So what sort of what sort of motivational strategies do you put in place to get someone to sort of like more compliant?
So motivational strategies, I kind of, to be honest, that's a funny one for me, because to completely be honest with it, I think that I tailor my nutrition programs so well to the individual that they find their programs really easy to stick to. So I often get the clients, like I said, saying, that they don't feel like they're on a diet at all, or they're eating more and they don't understand they're losing body fat and things like this. So it's really, I don't find that I have to use a lot of motivational strategies. I do like to give clients options. So with their nutrition plans, I used to when this was done by hand, it often took time. I now have a software that I use, and it's called iNutrition Pro. And basically it gives them options. So I set their macros at each meal. They can't change that. but they can pick their food sources, and it will automatically change the grams for them. So I really like that software because it gives people flexibility, which I believe is important in compliance with nutrition. I don't think anyone is going to eat the same thing for the rest of their life. So that's more what I turn to for compliance sake. That's sort of like the if it fits your macros approach as well. I find that quite good for certain clients who are a little bit more educated and know the different macronutrients, so your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. That works really well to keep them on track. Also, I guess, yeah, I think others prefer to follow a strict program, which is fine too. They just want ease, really. So you've just really got to know your client and who you're working with and what's going to work for them. I guess other than that, regular checkups. If the client's progressing, then that's going to be enough for them to keep their motivation high. So I encourage them to also take progress pictures, as often, obviously the scales isn't a very good measure of progress. So if they can't come in to see me for a while or get a body scan or something like that, pictures often tell a lot. See how far they've come. I guess the other thing I do, it's not really motivational tactics, but I'll always provide like healthy recipes to keep people, as I say, that's again, it's more, for me, it's more about giving them variety and options within their structured plan, if that makes sense. So that keeps them motivated. I think probably the most psychological work I have to do with the clients that have sort of phobias around calories or bringing them up, or carbs especially. There's a lot of people scared of carbs at the moment. But with them, it's just about, small introductions, and then showing them their progress is enough to establish, that healthier relationship with food, and they're going to understand that it's not that certain food, or it's okay to eat more, and they'll be fine. So that's probably more of this, psychological strategies I have to use. Motivational strategies probably more with training for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I like your approach that you keep things fairly simple.
Yeah.
It's like what Einstein said. If you can't explain things so like something like a 5-year-old can understand, then you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that is, you put it in real simple terms, so the client really understands, so they can really sort of go about it, and not really sort of get too sort of flustered about what they're doing, and sort of like getting too confused, because a lot of the problem with a lot of sort of trainers, they give sort of 30, 40 different sort of rules to follow when they're on the nutritional plan, and it just completely sort of frustrates the client.
It does.
Yeah, and they just end up sort of just losing it, and they're just not compliant. So I like your approach, keeping it very simple.
Absolutely.
So that's another thing that I can also, I'm just, like I said, I'm just ticking little boxes as we go along. It's the sort of like these knowledge points that you're dropping. So that's another thing that I can take on board with me. Just keep things all simple.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love that one. So in summary, what are the key points that someone, or some of our viewers, can sort of follow and put together in their own program when following a fat loss program? How would you what are the key points?
Okay, so I guess in summary, my key points would be, one would be to start off small, like we were talking about, because the body is really amazing at adaptation. Take one step at a time, take small steps, and when that plateaus, when you can't get any more progress out of that, then introduce something else. If you play all your cards at once and you've got nothing to fall back on, and pull out when times get tough, I guess. So why would you not reap the benefits of the small steps first, before you throw everything at it? So that's number one. So for most people, probably general population, if you know that your diet is unhealthy, or you're eating the highly processed or takeaway packaged foods, the first thing would be to start off by cleaning up your diet, and focusing on eating whole foods. It's really hard to actually overeat on whole foods. It's about nourishment. So start seeing food for what it is. It's fuel. It's there to drive our bodies and be used for energy. It's not really a reward, although we've been brought up with it to be seen as a reward. I mean, we get cakes at birthdays and things like that, and that's all part of the social part of it. But it's really just fuel. So don't be afraid of any of the food groups or macros either. But eat when you're hungry. Listen to your body, and don't eat when you're not hungry. The third point would be to make an effort to exercise 3 times a week, minimum, and gradually increase again. I guess another main point actually would be, the less is more approach. So the less is more approach with nutrition combined with more is more training, it doesn't work. You'll get results initially, then you'll plateau and be hugely frustrated. It becomes unsustainable. So as I say, you only can either increase your training, or decrease your food further, and where does it get to the point where you can't do that anymore? So body adapts and plateaus, your metabolism slows right down, you'll end up with hormonal issues, especially I find this very common in females. So hormonal downregulation, it's a massive one. The body won't prioritize losing body fat. So instead, I like to use times of less nutrition, less exercise, and more nutrition, more exercise. Again, in that cyclical approach, I find works really well. Prevents the body adapting to anything. So that's the fourth key thing. The fifth would be about strength, focusing on strength training with the big compound movements. So lift heavy and try to progressive overload each week through either repetitions or through weight. Any additional volume training should be at over 65% for hypertrophy. And the increased lean body mass will increase your resting metabolic rate. So if your diet is controlled, you'll lose body fat there. Another key point would be to tailor the program towards the client's individual needs. So that is huge for compliance. Like I say, that makes it a lifestyle rather than a quick dietary fix that they're going to come off and then put all the weight back on. They won't find it hard to stick to if it's similar to how they like to eat. And therefore, that'll reduce the need for any motivational tactics. Keep them accountable, and their results will be enough to keep them going. And then I guess the last thing would be that to be aware that nutrition programming is an ongoing process rather than a one-off diet plan. It really is. It's with the adaptation, we have times where weight loss is not linear. It's not, so don't expect that. It goes up and down, and you got to work, I guess, with someone, a professional, to know how to go, how to prevent those adaptations or pass through them without damaging all these things like your hormones and just keeping more and more of a calorie deficit. It's not the way to go. So yeah, it's a process. It's not just a one-off diet plan, which I think a lot of people, when they first come to me, they're surprised when I explain that to them. Yeah.
And I think it really ties in well with, this is not a race, this is a marathon.
No.
If
anything, that is really damaging. If people lose body fat in a fast manner, then usually they'll put it all back on within a period. So they say 0.5 of a kilogram is maintainable weight loss for a week. Sorry, 0.5 of a kilogram a week is a maintainable fat loss. Sure. Yeah, anything more is unsustainable.
And I love you know, with nutrition, just like training, you make those small changes, and you just let it run its course, and you get as
That's it.
much results as you can from the smallest adjustment, and then, you know, when you do get to that plateau, then you can change it, or just before that plateau. Well, otherwise, the body doesn't know what you want it to adapt to. And just like today, you know, when I wrote to the closed group on the, the Crush closed group, you know,
Yeah,
with regards to training, you know, if
yeah,
you're sort of training and you're dancing around and you're going from exercise to exercise, training plan to training plan, your body won't know what the hell it needs to adapt to.
no, that's it.
So you
You've
have
got to
to
be
sort of
specific.
absolutely. So you got to block it. You got to put a date. You got to put a time. You got to put a time frame to whatever adjustments that you're doing, so your body actually knows what it what it needs to adapt to. So I think it just ties in
Yeah.
beautifully with. At that time, I don't have to check the box. I already sort of we're already on the same page in that respect. But I really appreciate the all the sort of the responses you gave to those questions, and you know, not only sort of the viewers would they take home sort of all these sort of pearls of wisdom and these knowledge bombs, but you know, even myself, I'm just ticking boxes and confirming what I already knew, sort of
Yeah,
knew, and now know.
yeah,
So that's
beautiful.
fantastic. So that was just one more thing before you go. How
Yeah.
can the viewers or listeners sort of track you down for your sort of services? Have you got a page on Facebook or a website
Yep.
or
So
number?
I have a Facebook page. I've got a business Facebook page. It's just under my name, so it's under Alice Cousins, and then you just type in athlete, and it will show up there. Um, I work out of Good Life Maori, as you said, so that's for people in Perth, I guess. Or I also work with online clients as well. So if anyone has any inquiries, then my email address is just my name. So it's just alice.cousins@hotmail.com. And yeah, that's the main ways to get in touch and for my services. Yeah.
Okay, appreciate it. And I'll put all those contact details up on the when this YouTube clip goes up on the Perth Elite Personal Trainers page as well. So,
Beautiful.
Alice, thank you very much.
Thank you, Danny.